And the Finance Minister, Simon Hamilton, is with me. Simon Hamilton, can you shed any light on the plan to reduce jobs in the public sector?
Well, look, more will be revealed about the entirety of the budget next week when I make a statement to the Assembly. But I think it's only natural that in a situation where we have been having to deal with a very challenging public sector expenditure situation where we're getting less money coming from London in our block grant, that means that there are going to be consequences in terms of tough decisions about the size of a public sector in Northern Ireland. And you know, we have, as an executive, agreed that we will look at the issue of a voluntary exit scheme for members of the public sector, and we will be developing that in the weeks ahead.
I've heard it said that for every £100 million of cuts, that will result in 3,000 less jobs.
Well, we're looking at the detail of a possible voluntary exit scheme, and I mean, I think it's only natural that when you have less money, that you're delivering less services, that you would need less people.
Are those figures okay?
You know, it depends in lots of detail, but they sound broadly right in terms of the quantity of people who might be leaving the service.
So that means that if we're talking about 160 million less in the budget, we're talking about 4,500 jobs.
Well, there'll be a range of ways in which ministers in their individual departments can save money. I mean, I made it clear to them in the budget document that they should also be looking at services that perhaps they should cut back or even stop because they're not working any longer. But in the circumstances that we find ourselves in, where you had less money to spend, you have got to deal with the realities of the situation. You can't wish away the cuts that we are having to face. As an executive, you have to take tough decisions, and I think it's disappointing that others weren't able to face up to those tough decisions.
Was Martin McGuinness right when he said that Stormont could have collapsed if an agreement wasn't reached?
Well, I think if you don't have a budget, you don't have a government. So I think it was absolutely necessary that we got agreement this week. It was doubly necessary because we needed to access the £100 million loan facility to get us out of financial difficulties that we were having in this year. So all of those parties who abstained or voted against the draft budget today have offered no other way through the problems that we had, not just in this financial year, but actually in the next financial year as well.
It is only a draft budget, so it has to go before the House.
It is. So I'll be making a statement giving broader detail on the budget on Monday. That will go out to public consultation over a 2-month period, and I'm open to listen to ministerial colleagues and also the public in terms of the responses that they have.
You've mentioned this already, but can I ask you, have you done enough to safeguard that £100 million loan?
I believe that we have. I mean, the condition that the Chancellor set to access that loan, which gets us out of very real problems this year, which none of the parties who abstained or voted against offered a way through. If we hadn't have made the agreement today, we would have been £100 million less, and it would have been the disaster right now in terms of this year and the delivery of public services in Northern Ireland.
It is only a loan. It does have to be paid back. And how do you intend to do that?
Well, that again, we will reveal that in terms of the detail of the budget, but we have found a way which will repay that loan without having a serious impact on public services.
Does it mean selling property?
Well, well, we are looking at a way in which we can use perhaps asset receipts from asset sales to offset the cost of that loan. So whilst there are still reductions in terms of our public spending, it's not exacerbated further by the need to repay that out of our budget.
I know welfare reform isn't actually on the agenda here as such. However, have you put enough money aside to pay the fines for this year and for next year?
We've set aside money in the budget to deal with a special package of measures that would enhance welfare reform as it has been legislated for in Great Britain. So this will ameliorate the worst effects of welfare reform for people in Northern Ireland. We've set a quantity of money aside for that. If we had to pay the fines and indeed the IT cost to develop our own system, that would have been another £200 million. That would have equated to maybe 4 to 5% further cuts off budgets. In my view, that was not sustainable. That was not deliverable. We have to find a way through this. It is an issue that is in the talks process, and it now has to be resolved.
So this is the least worst option, yes?
This is a difficult scenario that we have had to face. It's not a sort of a budget that I would like to have had to have brought forward, but it is the realities of what we have to deal with in terms of the financial circumstances we find ourselves in.
For now, Simon Hamilton, thank you.
Thank you.